My name is Ward Patton, and I'm a Valmet partner hosting today's webinar. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping tips to go over. First, all attendee microphones are muted, but if you look at your GoToWebinar toolbar, there's a questions feature that will allow you to type and submit questions to the presenter, which will be answered during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Next, if you have any issues with audio, video, or connectivity during the webinar, call GoToWebinar Technical Support at 833-851-8340. Their staff are standing by to assist with any technical difficulties. They recommend that you use Chrome or Firefox as your browser during this webinar. Finally, we're recording today's webinar and we'll be posting it on Valmet's YouTube channel within a few days. Now, let's begin today's webinar. Your presenters today are Mikko Viljama and John Olzak. Together they have over 6 decades of experience in the paper industry, working in various functions ranging from the wet end to the dry end of the paper machine. John is currently the product manager for doctoring in North America, and Mikko is the director of North American Service Agreements and works with the scoping and implementation of agreements. Mikko is going to start off by explaining Valmet's approach to aftermarket agreements. John will then continue by looking specifically at the Doctoring Services Agreement, previously known as DoctorCare. He'll also show examples of strong results achieved by mills and how an agreement can be set up, including what types of services can be included in a tailored agreement. Finally, we'll allow 10 to 15 minutes of time at the end for questions and answers.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you heard, my name is Mikko Viljama. I'm head of the Valmet Agreements business here in North America. I've been with Valmet for 25 years. From the last 15 years, I've been located here in North America, currently in Atlanta, Georgia. So before we let John talk about doctoring, I was going to give a short 10 minutes overview from 25,000 feet of Valmet's agreement business, how Valmet approaches these agreements, and what are some of the things our customers are looking for from these partnerships. About 10 years ago, we made a strategic decision to focus on long-term agreements, and it wasn't a difficult decision to make, as the message from you guys, customers, were loud and clear. You wanted to move away, when possible, from traditional transactional business, and you were willing to seek out other easier means to do business with us. And as a result of this, today, about every third production line here in North America has some sort of an agreement with us. A little bit of our service philosophy here first. So Valmet's way to serve starts from the core values at the bottom there. You see safety comes first. We want to be close to you guys, and we have people you can trust, and hopefully also solutions which match your needs. The second layer of this philosophy is the life cycle approach, which means that we want to be part of the product from the day one when it leaves our facility to the day it becomes obsolete at your mill. The third layer of Valmet's way to serve is our delivery models, where we have the service agreements, which are also part of today's topic. And the fourth and the final layer is really the service offering itself. This means mainly the previously mentioned traditional transactional business, what we know. You see here the same offering, maybe a little more details than the previous slide, and I'm assuming that most of you are familiar with these, so I'm not going to go through these. Rather than my message here is that basically anything Valmet offers, either product or service, can be built to an agreement format. So if you are buying something regularly from Valmet, I would recommend that you ask from your friendly local Valmet mill sales manager if there would be any opportunities to simplify this business and make it even more beneficial for both parties. What's typical for an agreement then? My opinion is that it makes little sense to make an agreement which is just for a year or two. Therefore, I always recommend at least to start with a 3-year agreement. The reasons for this are that it takes some time to get to know each other. understand how you operate, and what are the possible challenges you might have. So we'll typically start with a 3-year agreement, and almost all cases end up extending this agreement after the initial period. Agreements can be either corporate or mill-level agreements. If they are corporate-level agreements, they typically work so that individual mills are either automatically joined to the agreement, or the mills can choose if they want to be part of an agreement. And with corporate agreements, I'm talking about any kind of agreement here, rolls, ductors, consumables. We talk about different tier levels depending on the business volume usually that the mill does with Valmet. With these different tier levels, then we of course include to our agreements different services and incentives, such as, for example, the continuous improvement programs, which have been or become very important nowadays and integrated part to our service agreements. We approach these agreements as projects, and as projects, the agreements have also a dedicated project or an agreement manager who manages the agreement. And especially if it's a corporate level agreement, we always try to have a dedicated agreement manager for that agreement and that corporate. One of the benefits I see from these agreements is commonly established terms and conditions, which, at least in the theory, should make the cooperation easier. And when we have these TCs established once, it definitely helps if and when we add other agreements to the existing portfolio. Part of doing the business easier is the price list, which means that you don't have to every time ask a price for something you need. With agreements, we typically provide a fixed price list for the following 12 months. Last but not least, if there's something we have learned in the past 15 years, is that communication is the key to a successful agreement. With my own agreements, I typically propose that when we start a new agreement, we meet on quarterly basis during the first year, and if everything has gone fine during the first year, I recommend that we'll meet maybe twice in the second year. And from that on, it's up to you how often do you want to meet me. Personally, I would like to keep the second year schedule and still meet twice a year, just to make sure that we follow everything we have promised and nothing goes by us. As said in the beginning, Valmet has a lot of agreements, but very few of these agreements are identical. And the reason for this is that we always want to tailor these agreements to specific needs or targets each customer have. One customer might be looking for safety improvements, and another one tries to lower their production costs, just as an example. This same tailoring shows up also with our offering, and what I mean by this is that, of course, you customer decide what products or technologies should be included to an agreement. After those have been identified, then you can look at if there's any complementary services which should also be part of this agreement. But we are also very flexible when it comes to choosing how we price an agreement. And this is the part I would like to challenge you guys a little bit. An agreement doesn't always have to be based on fixed or monthly pricing. Make us earn your money and business. Selecting a pricing model which is based on, for example, how many tonnages you produce and get out of the door. Just something to think about. This is a busy slide and not meant to be read as is, but what I wanted to point out here is that we Valmetiers are famous of wanting to talk about our products and services. But I would like to turn this 180 degrees round and look at each of your mill functions or personnel, the tasks and responsibilities you have, and understand then what, if anything, keeps you awake at the night. And if there are some challenges, and especially if they hind you to concentrate to your core business, which is making paperboard or tissue, whatever that might be, let's see if there is something we can offer to help you with these challenges. And just as an example here, you see listed superintendent and mill maintenance manager. We have listed as one of the tools here for the maintenance manager, just as an example, again, condition monitoring. With a lot of different agreements, we still see some trends, some common drivers which makes our customers to search for these partnerships. And by far the first reason, or the reason number one, is reliability. Everyone is looking for more reliable operations partners, etc. The solid number two is cost. And I'm not talking about now finding the lowest price. I'm talking about partnering with somebody who can reduce the overall cost during a certain time frame and also helps you to budget these costs and stay within budgeted costs. Everybody appreciates a proactive partner, and to give an example of how Valmet does this, we can take a look at our role agreements, which always start with the baseline audit so we understand what is the current situation. And after we know that, and when we know what the targets are, we'll build a roadmap how to achieve these targets. And basically, this means that we are responsible of the roles, and it's our job to make sure that those roles are changed or served when needed. Last one is rather given, but still worth mentioning, and that is the expectation that the supplier you partner will constantly improve what they do. Valmet signed a first agreement about 15 years ago with Temple Inland, Ontario. We have a culture of doing these agreements, and we also have a dedicated group of people who manage these agreements. The most important thing for us is to understand each customer's specific KPIs and targets so that we can build a tailored agreement for that customer. And when we have those KPIs and goals, these will become our commitment and our common goals to achieve for both of us. I already mentioned the total cost of ownership approach, which we want to take. And with Valmet agreements, you'll get access and support not only from our local people here in North America, but also globally where our expert might be.
Thank you, Mikko. And thank all of you for joining us today. My name is John Olzak. I'm the product manager for doctoring technology here in North America. Just a little bit about me. I've been working with doctors for roughly 25 years, and I spent the bulk of that time working in the field helping customers with various doctoring applications. Today, I'd like to provide you with some insight on the doctoring service agreements that Valmet has available. Now, these service agreements are geared to optimize the performance of the doctors on your machine and also lower your total cost of ownership. Typical investments are minimal, and the results from optimizing your doctoring program can include better runnability, improved quality, reduced maintenance costs, and improved safety awareness. Now, does a doctoring agreement make sense for you? Ask yourself some of these questions. Have you had quality issues or downtime related to poor doctoring performance? Have you run out of a doctor blade and had to substitute an alternate material? Do your operators know exactly what blade goes where on your machine? I'm just going to pause a second on those items because if you have run out of a material and you've had to substitute a material, this can be a dangerous proposition. If you substitute a material, for example, if you use a steel blade on a rubber cover, there's dangers involved in damaging the roll surface, and actually you'd be lucky if that's all you damaged. So there's certainly some issues there that are important that sometimes are overlooked. Not only that, if you think you've got a material that's a direct match, it goes somewhere else on the machine, that hardware on the blade may actually fit in that holder, but that blade could fall out and then it could damage some equipment on the machine. Just a little bit, a tidbit about the importance of knowing what goes where and having the right materials and having correct inventory on hand. Also, if you lack resources to plan and implement basic repairs, your equipment could be getting neglected and eventually could have a failure. Do you have old technology on your machine? I know that I've walked some machines and I've seen some pretty old equipment and I've made some comments that it looks like some of these belong in a museum. But all kidding aside, upgrading your technology can improve the performance of your doctors. Have you had safety concerns with your program? Have you witnessed operators mishandling blades? Or have you seen your operators struggling to change a blade on the machine? Maybe during a shutdown, you see a fork truck come up and then a tow motor attached and come along and they're trying to pull a blade out. Well, it's a good indication that something's not quite right. Typically, in that case, you may have a damaged blade holder or something there. But if you're seeing these things, then maybe a doctoring agreement makes sense, and we can help address the areas. Valmet's doctoring service agreement is really a partnership with the mill, and this includes a managed inventory program. Partnership component is working together with the mill to set targets and select products and services that will increase the performance of your doctors and also lower your total cost of ownership. the managed inventory component, Valmet will supply blade storage units, handling equipment, and then also as part of the inventory management, Valmet will do regular blade counts, and these blade counts will trigger replenishment orders to make sure that you've got the correct inventory in place. Consignment is also available with these programs, and flexible payment plans are available, and we are flexible to cater those payment plans to your needs. There are also additional services that can be included with the program. Technical expertise can be provided to assist with doctoring problems. We can also provide training for operators on safety procedures, how to handle blades, how to use handling equipment, and then also training for maybe a maintenance staff on, maybe it's 101 on doctoring, how to set and align a doctor, how to adjust a blade angle. So those types of training are also available. Discounts can also be included with the agreements. With a multi-year agreement, we can offer discounts on blades, holders, and parts. Shutdown services can also be included, as well as doctor audits and complete machine doctor audits. Now, when looking to tailor a program for a mill, we can identify your needs and then try to match it to the best program. If you're looking at, maybe, hey, we just want to maintain optimize the blades on our machine and maintain the doctors in good working order, maybe a basic plan would make sense. In this case, we would go through all your blades, make sure we have the correct materials for each roll cover, look at all the spare parts required to keep those doctors in good working order, and then also there could be a flexible payment plan available. If you want to take it to the next step, really it's those things, but also adding in an audit of all the doctors on your machine. Now this would be a doctoring specialist. It could be me that walks your machine and looks at every doctor on that machine and provides recommendations. These recommendations could be short-term and they could be long-term. And some of those long-term recommendations could be based on best practices in the industry. Another thing that we want to look at too is, in order to keep those doctors running well, we want to look at some preventive maintenance planning, and that can be part of this program, as well as training for operators, maybe some safety training, and also basic maybe doctor alignment training as well for maintenance staff. Flexible payment plans can be part of pretty much any tailored program. And then if you really want to take it to the next step and optimize, this is where we're really looking at where these multi-year contracts come into play. Maybe there are a lot of doctors on the machine. It could be overwhelming to really improve every single one. What we can do is say, hey, we need to hit these priority ones, then we start moving forward. But we're continually trying to improve the doctoring on the machine, and as we move forward, we can start implementing some of those longer term recommendations as well. As part of call it an optimized program here, we also can provide additional services for shutdowns. It could be if you need some additional labor to get some of the work done during an outage, we can look at providing that. If you have really good millwrights, we can provide supervision to supervise them during a shutdown. So these are some of the components that can be added to a program. Now, if you're really looking at trying to optimize the doctors on your machine and increase the overall performance of the machine, it's really important to pick the right partner. I once had a customer, say to me, there are a bunch of good suppliers out there, and it looks like they all have can supply quality blades. But really, it's the support that you get that's valuable. That, resonated with me, and it still resonates with me today. So when you're looking at partnering and you're looking at suppliers out there, Valmet is a company that has a real broad knowledge base of the entire machine. If you look at trying to make an impact, this chart kind of depicts it nicely. You've got blades. If you look at just optimizing the blades on your machine and maybe you are trying to lower your cost, best bang for the buck, you can make some impact. But if you start looking at blades and holders, you'll get a little bit more of an impact. Now, if you incorporate the complete doctor system and you're upgrading those and optimizing the complete doctor system along with holders and blades, you will see an impact, definitely more of an impact. And here's where I think that there are many suppliers out there kind of cut short right here. With Valmet, you've got also a broad knowledge base of rolls, fabric, and the entire paper making process. So when you bring that in and coordinate it with your doctoring program, we really can see a huge impact there on improving those doctoring systems. For example, if we're looking at a center roll position on a machine, we'll be looking at the doctor itself, but also all the equipment that's around it. So really that doctor's job is to remove the sheet from the roll, but it also needs to condition that roll surface for proper release. So maintaining the surface roughness of the roll, the RA, and also looking at the showers for proper coverage, proper water volume. Is there a steam box in the area? All these factors come into play. Are the blades matched correctly for that roll cover? It's extremely important to have that knowledge, and when you're looking at upgrades and or improvements to the doctors, really understanding how those improvements can impact the machine and what type of benefits you can have. Now I'd like to go through some case studies here. This first one here is really a basic one. It takes in your basic blade and holder recommendations like we talked about, sort of looking at a basic plan. This is a good example of one that fits in that mold. So in this particular case, there's a dryer can. The doctor blades are wearing really fast. There's a lot of fiber buildup behind the blade. Once we look at the position, we identify that the blade holder is damaged and it's not doing its job. And a blade holder should really provide uniform, even loading pressure of the blade across the entire roll face. Now, if there's a section of that holder that's applying a little bit more pressure, it's going to cause that blade to wear rapidly in the area. And there may be some other areas where it's not providing enough pressure, or even it's not even forcing the blade to contact the roll and you have a gap. So, if you're loose in one area, that's going to be an area where fiber is going to get by and build up. And if you're contacting heavy on an area, that's where your blade's going to wear out. And if you get this rapid blade wear, you're going to end up changing blades faster. So recommendation here, change the holder out, upgrade the doctor blade material to match the roll surface, and the results were great. We saw 50% longer blade life, longer blade time. That results in annual blade cost reductions. There are also some additional benefits here that maybe are overlooked or are a little bit harder to put your finger on. But in this case, a cleaner, drier surface is going to transfer heat better to the sheet, and possibly you'll have some steam savings there as well. Less fiber getting behind the blade, that's great. If you have a lot of fiber build up there, it could be breaking away and redepositing on the sheet and causing a quality defect. So fewer quality issues. Case study number 2. Brought up a center roll earlier. It is a critical position on the machine. They often draw a lot of attention. In this particular case, mill has a center roll, but really what they were struggling with is getting blades to last shutdown to shutdown. As a result, they would have to shut down just to change the blades. So the goal really was to get their blades to last shutdown to shutdown. This is something that I've seen before, and it may not be just the blade that's the problem. But you may see a lot of suppliers dropping off their best doctor blade for a trial and see if it can make it the distance. For me, that's not necessarily the best approach. Best approach is to really look at the entire application, understand what's going on, look at the roll, look at the showering, look at everything that's involved in that area, and find out what's not in the ballpark. What's not best practice, and see if we can fix that and get it back on track. In this case, it was identified that the lubrication showers were subpar. The water coverage and the water volume were just not quite right. Really, the shower wasn't designed to run at the correct pressure. It was designed to run at a higher pressure. The mill ended up backing it down because of too much water overspray. So in this particular case, the shower was corrected. The blade material was matched to the roll cover, and we saw a blade life increase of 75%. As a result of those blades lasting longer, there was a cost reduction. But even more importantly, the blades lasted shutdown to shutdown, and the mill was able to increase production as a result. Case study number 3. This is a good one for new technology. So in this particular case, this mill was dryer limited. They're really trying to increase the solids off the cooch. And they had a double doctor, on the machine. And a lot of times, you may look at that and say, hey, I've got best practices here. I don't have just a single doctor. I have a double doctor. There's not much more I can do. In this case, they did try to upgrade with some air blades. These air blades are designed in 2 different ways, but the design for this particular application, there's air that is released behind the blade, and it's supposed to increase that vacuum level behind the blade, which would draw more water out of the holes in the cooch. In this case, it's not quite set up right. Maybe you don't see the benefits there. And also, the air blades do cost quite a bit to run, so there is a cost to that compressed air. When we looked at this application, we identified that maybe the air blades weren't doing the job they were advertised to do. Valmet has a Val dual blade. It's a poly blade with a special geometry to it, and that geometry is designed to enhance that vacuum behind the blade and draw out the water from the holes. But not only that, it's designed to remove the surface level water as well. Now, if you can get the alignment and the adjustment of these blades right, they can work great. And also the positioning of the blades on the roll. Over time, we have seen that there are some design advantages when you start separating out these blades on these types of covers. So in this case, we were able to use a new technology with Val dual blades. We were able to turn off the compressed air, and we did see an increase off the solids. The mill was able to speed up and increase production. Okay, case study number 4. This is a good case study to look at, a partnership that goes over a period of time. And in this particular case, the mill really wanted to stay with kind of the basic program, really looking at blades and holders and try to get their blades to last longer and then optimize those materials and try to save some money. So if you look at this over a period of time, we were able to optimize the materials. Maybe it takes a couple years to change out, some holders on the machine. Maybe you do some in the first year, and what your budget allows, you do some more in the next year, but you're continuing to move forward. And as you do that, you're continuing to save money. So this is a good example of, over a period of time, a mill being able to lower their doctoring costs by over 50%. Okay, now getting into a little bit more of what we do and how we get started. Typically, when we're looking at a machine, we try to map out the machine, locate all the doctors on the machine, and identify everything clearly. We want the operators to know what blade goes where, and we try to make it as simple for them as possible. So in this case, we've labeled a doctor blade as an A, and an A blade goes in an A location. So we have a bunch of blades on the machine that are the same. They take the same blade. So this is an example of how would we present this for your operators. The next thing too is what we would look at is, again, looking at your blade change schedule. Now if you can optimize when you change your blades and reduce that if possible, you can save some money over the course of a year. I know some mills will change all the blades on their machine every outage. That's okay, if that works for them. But we can help you try to optimize that if you're looking to save money in that area. We can also try to optimize those materials to maybe run to every other outage. That particular blade may cost a little bit more, but if you don't have to change it every outage, you're saving money overall. It's a type of strategy that we can take. Now there would be some positions where we do not recommend trying to extend the life, but that would be for other reasons, because the performance that we're getting out of that doctor and that blade are so critical that we do not want to try to extend it past a normal practice. And there are some positions like a center roll that are critical like that, where it makes more sense to change it every outage. Now here I do want to touch on safety a little bit, but again, back to the IDs. A blade is identified on the box as an A. Then also in the storage units, it's also, the compartment is labeled as an A. So we try to keep everything real simple. But from a safety point of view, my thoughts are the doctor blade should stay in the box as long as possible. The less times a human hand touches a blade, the better off we are, everybody. Less incidents, so forth, so on. So if we can try to keep that blade in the box until a blade needs to go on the machine, we're all better off. Now, Valmet has a nice design with their boxes where you don't have to take the cover off. Now, I've been working with Dr. Blades for an awful long time, and if you take the cover, complete cover off and split that box open, you don't really know what's inside. And there could be 5, 6, 7 blades inside that box, especially if it's already been opened up once. You don't know if they're tied together. And if you have 4 or 5 blades and they're coiled up, it's a spring-loaded weapon. And if you open the box and the box was kind of holding those together and down, it could come out at you. So, it can be very dangerous, especially if you're working with metal blades. It's something that really, if you don't have much experience with that, it can be dangerous. So there's some of the training and awareness that we can bring to the table on the different style of boxes that are out there in the industry. In this particular case, these boxes, you don't have to take that cover off. You rip the corner off, the blades index out, there's a wire tie at the end. You simply snip that and the next blade is in place. Here's a good look at the blades storage units that Valmet provides. We have a 20 compartment storage unit. Typically goes into the storeroom. Some mills prefer to have it up on the machine, but typically it goes in the storeroom. And then we have multiple blade trolleys, and these can, depending on how many blades that you have on your machine, we could have one of these up in the wet end, one in the press, maybe a couple in the dryer section. But what's nice is you can move these, they're on wheels, and you can line it up right where you're changing the blades. The blades are aligned in the box so that they can come out and go straight into the holder on the machine. So we're trying to reduce the amount of time that blade is out and exposed. Getting started. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about these programs and how a tailored program might look for your mill, certainly you can reach out to me. We can schedule a meeting to talk about your needs. If you have some goals, we can look at that. Problem areas, we can look at that. Typically, from there, we move into a preliminary audit of the machine. We would look at all the doctors and identify all the doctors that are on your machine today. We come back and provide you with a basic list of recommended blades and holders and parts. We'll review those findings with you. And here's where the partnership comes in. We look at trying to customize that plan for you. We'll review all the doctor blades, holders, and parts. If you have some service needs, we can go over that. If you do need some direct labor, we can look at bringing that in to help you. If you need help changing blades during outages, upgrading holders, changing bearings. If you have good millwrights and you're not lacking in the labor department, we can certainly provide a supervisor to supervise that crew to work on your doctors. If you have emergency service needs, we can look at catering that into the program. Application expertise. So there are some mills that, maybe they do have a center roll application and they feel more comfortable with having a doctor specialist look at that position more than once a year. So maybe every 6 months, someone goes over that doctor soup to nuts. We can cater that in. If you have training needs for your operators or your maintenance staff, we can schedule that and tailor that into the program as well. And then really the next thing to do is hit the go button and get started. Thank you, guys. That completes my portion of today's webinar.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John and Mikko. Now we're in the Q&A session. Before we get started, let me just say that this presentation is also available in PDF format. Simply email John at jonathan.olzak@valmet.com or Mikko at mikkoviljama@valmet.com, and they'll be happy to send you a copy. We've received a few questions already, well, a fair number of questions, but you can still submit them during the Q&A period. If Mikko and John can't answer them today because they need more information or the question deals with confidential matters, they'll be sure to email you a comprehensive answer after the webinar. John, Mikko, take it away for Q&A.
You mentioned the continuous improvement programs. Can you tell us a bit more about those and how they work? Okay, sure. So the continuous improvement programs changed. Has changed in the past few years. I remember when I started in this position 7-8 years ago, and I felt like Valmet was always promoting these continuous improvement programs as part of our agreements. And now it seems like any agreement proposal we make, the customers want us to have a continuous improvement program part of those. Basically, what it means that typically against the volume of business a customer gives to Valmet, certain percentages of that becomes us a target to find improvements or savings from your process back to you. So it can be anything process related. It can be if it's a corporate level agreement, it can be a certain mill. It can be part of the agreement. It can be outside of the agreement. However we want to do it, but it seems like it's important for our customers today that they feel like we also are engaged to this and try to help them with their processes. Typically, these are well documented. Typically, they are recorded, and we need a signature from a mill or a corporate to make sure that we agreed on savings and whatnot. So they are sort of official part of agreement. So I guess that's in a nutshell the continuous improvements.
Okay, Mikko, I think I'll take the next one here. This question is based on setting up a program. How long does a program take to get up and running? I'm assuming that's right after we hit the go button. Typically, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks, and just keep in mind that we need an outage. We need to come in and review all the positions and come up with a recommended list of blades for you. We also need to sit down and discuss some targets, but also there are other things going on in the background. We need to order storage units, get blades made, and so forth. So typically that process is about 6 to 8 weeks.
And I see another one here. It says question for Mikko on adding doctoring agreement to existing general service agreement. So I think I mentioned this with the terms and conditions, but basically this kind of works like your Costco card or Delta Miles program, where more volume Valmet gets, the more services and discounts we can give back to the customers. So let's say that there's a frame agreement or general agreement with the customer, and you want to add another agreement like Doctor Care on that. That definitely gives an options to look at savings for us, which we can then provide back to you with a new agreement. So it all bundles together, so to speak.
Mikko, I've got another one that has come in here, and it is based around travel, which I suppose is a really good question at this point. In the case of doctoring service, can Valmet personnel travel? Right now, we can. It's considered an essential service. We can travel. Our service personnel are going to mills at this point and working on site. We know that each individual mill has their own restrictions, but if we do need to do a quarantine or have tests done, we're trying to accommodate that the best we can.
I think there was a follow-up to that question about specifically, can you travel, can U.S. or Canadian personnel travel to Mexico to perform service?
That is a question that we would have to look into and get back to. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think at the moment the Mexican border doesn't let U.S. citizens in, but we can get, for example, experts from Europe to travel to Mexico or from Canada, but U.S. citizens are not allowed to country. I got one more here popped up. You mentioned typically Valmet agreements come with certain incentives. What would be an example of those? Yeah, incentives and free services are usually topics a lot of customers want to discuss. So some of the examples or some of incentives we can offer with the agreements are free services, free troubleshooting, free audits and stuff like that, which we provide as part of the agreement. But additionally to those, we also give access to our proprietary programs to help our customers, and we do have a lot of different simulation and calculation programs which we can then use to help agreement customers. Just as an example, a press simulation to find out the dryness out of press, or drying calculations and so on.
All right, looks like we have another question in. Does Valmet charge for the storage units for the blades? And so we do not charge for those. Those are provided as part of the program. And not only that, we make sure that we keep the, say the positional drawing that shows where all the blades go. If we make a blade change or recommendation, we try to update all that material right away. We also 5S these on a regular basis. So if one is getting run down, we'll take it back to our shop and we'll replace it with a new one, or we'll have it refurbished. But we do not charge for those. Those are part of the agreement. Now, Valmet does retain ownership of those. So if the program was canceled, then for some reason we would take them back. I do see another one here for me. It looks like it's on doctor training. In regards to your training for doctor alignment and general information, how long do these last? Well, we can certainly cater that to the specific information and the group that we're talking to. So, we can usually get it done in an hour to an hour and a half. And if we need to work with a smaller group these days, if we scheduled it for a certain day, we can maybe try to work in some smaller groups over an hour period, throughout the day. But usually it's like an hour to an hour and a half. I find if you go beyond that, we start losing people.
Okay, there was one more question that just came in. John, did you have a chance to look at that? Did it come
Yes, I do see it. Will Valmet conduct a doctor audit if all existing doctors are not manufactured by Valmet? Absolutely. We can look at any doctor and provide you some feedback on what we think, as far as a condition, and is it up to snuff, and are we looking at best practices here? So absolutely, we can look at different doctors on the, manufactured doctors on the machine. I have another one. What devices does Valmet offer to measure blade angles for doctor setup, and are there recommended angles for positions? We do have the electronic blade angle gauge. They're very accurate. You can check level, contact points, blade angles with that. As far as recommended angles by position, there are general guidelines for position, but really more importantly, we should be looking at the roll cover and what the doctor is doing. So, for instance, blade angle on a soft cover is going to be much different, than a blade angle on a bone hard roll. So, if we're looking at 30 P&J, we really need to reduce the blade angles. If we look at press rolls, really we can't look at it just by position. There are some press rolls that need to be doctored with different parameters. So when we look at recommendations for position, we're looking at roll cover and doctor blade material, and that's going to determine the blade angle, not necessarily what position it is. Other than we do factor in whether it's water removal or are we looking at sheet shedding. Those factors do come into play. The number one thing would be roll cover material.
Okay, that's about all the time we have for questions right now. There are a few outstanding. We'll make sure to get back to the people who asked those later. But I hope we were able to respond to most of your questions. If not, John and Mika will follow up via email. We'll also be emailing you a link to the recorded webinar as soon as it's available on YouTube. If you have any further questions, email them to jonathan.olzak@valmet.com or miko.viljama@valmet.com, or reach out to them at LinkedIn, and they can go more in depth with you about any doctoring needs you may have. We hope you've gained some valuable knowledge about doctoring and Valmet agreements today that can help your mill moving forward. Thank you all for giving us your time today, and we hope you'll join us at future Valmet webinars. Bye-bye.